Well, there was a young man, and it was time for him to get married. But he wasn't interested in any of the village girls. They were boring. And he was quite a catch, but no one had caught him. And then a stranger came to town, and ooh, she was beautiful. She had long blonde hair and big blue eyes and a apparently charming disposition. And he courted her, and he won her, and they got married. Now, when she came to move in, she just had a small suitcase of clothes and a spinning wheel. And his heart leapt up because, lovely domestic activity. But she didn't ask him to put the spinning wheel in the parlor. She said, take it down to the basement, which he did. And she said, put it in the corner, which he did. And then things were delightful between them. I mean, she was a good cook, she was good company. It just felt great, except at night. I mean, they would go to bed together, it was so cozy, but he was aware in the middle of the night that she might not be in the bed with him. And he tried to figure it out. He said, well, maybe she's gets hungry, maybe she's gone to get a snack, maybe she has insomnia and wants to read and doesn't want to disturb me. What a good woman she is. And he was going to ask her directly because he was discreet, but he finally had to find out himself. And so this is how he did it. He spent the day kind of napping on and off in between his tasks at work. And then earlier than usual, he said to his wife, oh, that was a wonderful meal. I am just exhausted. I'm going to go to bed early. And he lay down in the bed and made a good show of, and she climbed in the way she always did. And then she slipped out of the sheets. And then, leaving a little bit of space, he slipped out of the sheets. And then he tried to follow her. Now, indeed, she was not in the kitchen eating a snack, and she wasn't in the parlor reading a book. She went down to the basement. And he was very careful on the stairs. He knew where everything creaked, and he peered into the dim light. He did not see a basket of wool. No, she sat down at that spinning wheel and she started pressing on the treadle back and forth. And then she pulled her little finger so the skin seemed to stretch, and she wrapped that around the spindle and she sang, spin, spin, slip of skin, spin, spin. And sure enough, off the hand, off the arm, off the body. Ah, what was left? A strange mass of blood and bone and muscle, certainly not his sweet wife, who was left, at least the skin of her wrapped around the spindle. And then he had to follow this thing that had emerged from under her skin, lumping up the stairs, up the stairs, up to the attic where there was a window. And that thing flung the window open and sailed out. That thing could fly. And as it flew around the village, dogs howled and cats howled and babies cried and milk soured in the milk bottles. And off it flew. And he, of course, can you imagine how terrified he was? Well, the first thing he did, he had some presence of mind as he unwrapped that skin off the spindle. It kind of looked like a pink wetsuit with long blonde hair. And he hung it on a nail outside the house. And then he remembered he had 2 cans of blue paint. I'll tell you, it's really good to have 2 cans of blue paint around when something like this happens. They know this in the South, where this story comes from. And he got out the brush and he painted every window frame and all the doors. And then he closed the door and he looked in and he sat there just shuddering, waiting, waiting. And then he heard her coming back. She circled the house. Where had she gone? And that's when he knew she was a dreaded boo hag, and she had flown off to be with her boo daddy up there somewhere. But when she came back, and when she saw her skin hanging from a nail, and when she saw the blue paint that she couldn't go through, oh, she exploded into 100,000 pieces of blood and muscle and bone. And that was the end of the boo hag. You think he got married again? Mm-mm. He's so relieved to be alone with his blue framed windows, his blue door, and his blessed solitude.